Welcome, everyone, to Asian Pacific Voices Radio, where you'll find stimulating conversations that explore diverse topics and stories impacting our Asian Pacific American communities. I'm your host, Joanne Whitlock. My guest joining me today is the visionary behind a groundbreaking company founded, owned, and led by women and minorities. Her innovative venture has sparked a revolution in the once stagnant candy sector by introducing a clean label, better for you, natural, vegan, and gluten-free snack. Drawing inspiration from her Asian heritage, her creation celebrates cultural diversity and serves as a bridge builder through food. In the food industry, often lacking representation, her company is a beacon of diversity, injecting much-needed inclusivity into the sector. So it is my pleasure to welcome Mika Shino and Asian Pacific Voices Radio. Hi, Mika.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. What a beautiful introduction. Thank you.
Of course. So I'm so excited to have you on the show. I am such a foodie and I'm constantly snacking and I love mochi. So I'm excited to share your work with you. So if you don't mind, I just kind of want to get right into it, get to know about you personally. Talking about food, obviously, what sparked your passion for food and cultural heritage? Like, was there a pivotal moment from your childhood or early adulthood?
I think for me, food has been such a central part of my life and my family's life. I was born in Kyoto, Japan, and my grandmother was somebody who was obsessed even before the whole gourmet, the notion of gourmet food. She would have to get eggs from this particular farmer and seaweed from this other purveyor, and it was very much ingrained in our family, cooking and getting together and sharing family tradition in terms of the food culture.
And then that just kind of has stayed with you, something you pass on to your own family now as well?
Absolutely, it's been kind of my love language, I guess you can say. If I care about somebody, I'll cook for them. I've always been interested in ingredients, and it's really been passed to me by my family, but also throughout my adult life, my career, the different kinds of work that I've done. I've been lucky enough to travel a lot, and I've always tried to learn from each place. And I went to cooking school. I went to Cordon Bleu. So I really took it very seriously.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm not sure if you've read a book called Crying in H Mart. That reminded, what you just said
Yes.
reminds me a
Oh,
lot about it.
absolutely. What a beautiful book.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So how did your experience, I know you have talked about living and working in various countries. How did your experiences living and working in different locations and influence the creation of Issei Mochi Gummies?
Yeah, I think it's had a huge impact. So I used to work for the United Nations, specifically UNESCO, which is a United Nations educational, scientific, and cultural organization. So I was able to travel extensively throughout the Middle East, Africa, Asia. Um, and every time I would go, I'm just I love food. I'm a very curious person. So I would try different things and spices and different flavors and things that I wasn't exposed to growing up in New Jersey. So discovering flavors like in the Middle East, orange blossom and rose water and dates and pistachios, and Africa, all kinds of different chili peppers. And it just really opened up my mind. And throughout Southeast Asia, all kinds of, curries and different ingredients. So that's always been a source of inspiration and creativity. And I lived in a part of Paris for 17 years where there were a lot of grocery stores, Vietnamese, Thai, and I was able to just learn so much from that tradition, that part of the world.
I love that. I used to live in the Middle East for about a year and a half, so I definitely understand like all of the types of food and the having that culture, and then obviously growing up in the Philippines for me too. So love hearing
Mm.
people's experience and food, with traveling. Like food and their culture is my big draw to the countries that I go to. So I love hearing that.
Yeah, and it's really the way to delve in and connect with the people, really understand what the culture is about is through the food.
Absolutely. I mean, even the same type of food, just the way it's cooked in different ways is pretty impressive. So, um, and so I know that a lot of people usually you've heard of a lot of people kind of give up their current jobs and careers to pursue different avenues that are more passionate for them. Avenues are really more passionate for them. So for you though, what challenges did you face? I know that you transitioned from a career in academia, international organizations, like you said, with UNESCO. So did you face any challenges transferring from that world more into entrepreneurship in the food industry? Pretty two different, fields of work. Were there any challenges that you faced?
Absolutely. And I'm facing them every day still. Getting into an industry where I had no expertise, no knowledge, no network. I didn't know anybody. I didn't know how to make the simplest things, that you take for granted. Like, how do you make a package? How do you make a barcode? How do you figure out, where to get the nutritional label and the ingredient panel and make sure it's code with FDA? None of it. And I just followed my intuition, and I came to a point where I was serving so many people, and with a lot of honor. I worked for a lot of amazing people, but I thought I have to focus on myself and try to do something that I could be proud of, and also try to contribute to my community. And my work with the UN was always about finding vehicles of peace and vehicles of communication and intercultural dialogue. And I thought, if I can manage to take something that I grew up with in Japan and create it for people who don't know about my culture, that's a really powerful bridge that you can create. So I delved into it. And so the challenges that I faced was every single level, logistics, inventory, warehousing, certifications. How do you get to a shelf? Well, what are it was complete mystery. But what's amazing is that in this country, you can actually start from zero and people will help you. I can't imagine trying to do this in Japan. It wouldn't happen. And the way that the industry has welcomed me has been really amazing. I think I'm very lucky to be able to launch something where the openness of the industry towards Asian owned and women owned companies, I think is a very, quite a new thing. I don't know if it would have been the same if I came out with this 10, 15 years ago. So it's been a blessing, and there's challenges every day. And, every other day I feel like, what did I do? This is crazy. I know nothing about this industry. I don't know anything about what I'm doing, but you have to, sort of believe in your vision and hope that it works.
Oh, that is extremely inspiring. I think a lot of things that hold people back is they have the idea, they have the vision, they know what the end state is, but it's the small nuances, like you said, the logistics, the things that you don't really think about that kind of, hold them back from it. So it's really inspiring to hear you pushing through despite all those challenges because you knew what you wanted. You knew what your goal was and, you kind of pushed through that. So I know that's going to inspire quite a lot of people. You are such a multi-talented. I was reading about you. You're such a multi-talented person. You have a background in painting, music production, cooking, like you said, among other things. So just full of talent. How do you see all these venues, all these disciplines kind of intersecting in your life and in your work?
That's such a great question. And I think it's very difficult, maybe particularly for Asians. My parents grew up in an era where you're supposed to do one thing for your entire life. Especially in Japan, you work for one company and you do it for 50 years. I think all the different things that I've done was really led by my curiosity. And I was blessed to have parents who supported it. They didn't, try to push me into doing one thing, and they didn't blame me if I tried to pivot. And everything that I've done, there's a universal thread. And I think if you can excel in one field, right, whether it's dance or art or music or diplomacy, you know what it takes to work hard and achieve a certain level of success. So you can apply that to anything. So I think it is really scary to change disciplines, but I think you can feel it when you're not happy. And I think those are the kinds of things that make you sick, right? If you're doing a job every single day with people who you're not happy with necessarily and you don't feel fulfilled, you feel like you have more potential. If you don't tap into that, you're not going to be a happy person. So I think everything that I've done so far, it has really fueled into what I'm doing today. I think everything I'm able to utilize every skill that I've learned in all of my jobs. And also to be calmer, I think, when it comes to making decisions, for example, and be able to say, okay, I'm making this decision. It might be a mistake, but it's okay. I'm going to figure it out. And the biggest thing I think in working in different fields is that I know exactly what I don't want. I've had horrible bosses. We've all been in toxic environments, and I'm working so hard not just to have innovation in the product, but to be innovative in the company culture and make sure that everybody feels supported and we're having fun and we're laughing all the time. The people working with me. And I want it to be a joyful culture. So that's really important. And I think that's come because I've experienced so many other things that it wasn't like that for me.
I really love hearing that. I mean, I think we hear so many stories about our community where kind of what you said in the beginning, we are such a one track path, our older generations, our parents, my Filipino community, you are going to be a nurse. Like that is the thing. That's what you're going to be. So it's inspiring to see, individuals like you stepping out of the mold. And you're absolutely right. Loving what you do and loving your work is one of like the tenets of my life. Like you have to enjoy what you're doing every day. You just spend so much of your days working. Like you have to enjoy it. And they always say like if you love what you do, like you never actually work a day in your life, right? So absolutely love that. Cookbook. I know you have a cookbook, Smart Bites for Babies. Tell us about the process of developing that cookbook and kind of, your approach for creating healthier foods for families. Like how did that kind of come about?
Well, you've really done your research. No one's asked me about that. But that came about because like I said, I've always been interested in food. I've loved cooking. I went to cooking school, but I've never really wanted to work in the industry. I think it's very, very rigorous. And I've always wanted to keep it as kind of my creative space. But when I had my first son, he was diagnosed with a very debilitating and severe degenerative liver disease. So nobody could diagnose him for almost 2 years. And he was tested every other week in the hospital. And, it was a very traumatic experience. And working with different doctors and nutritionists and pediatricians, we're trying to figure out what's going on. Is it because of what I'm eating, breastfeeding? Is it something that he's allergic to? So we went through so many tests, and it actually turned out to be benign. We're very lucky. He didn't need a transplant or anything, but it really made me think about how we feed our children. And at the time, everybody was, organic was the big new thing. This was like 15 years ago. But you can eat organic white rice every single day. It doesn't mean it's nutritious. So I started to think a lot about nutrition and worked with a lot of pediatricians and reflected upon my culture in Japan. There are whole studies on certain foods you eat to boost memory during exam time, for example, and certain recipes. And so the connection between the mind and the body is very, very close. And we don't think about it separately. So I wrote that book because, after going through all this research with my son, I discovered that the human brain has exponential growth between 1 to 3 years. It's never going to go through this kind of brain growth ever. So that's the time where you need DHA omega fatty acids, you need folate, you need so many things that can really stimulate brain growth, and we never talk about it. So that's why I wrote this cookbook, to really try to integrate very natural foods that, it's not, additives or vitamins that you have to take. But if you're conscious about making sure that you get these fundamental nutrients like, salmon and sardines and spinach, and make sure that your kids eat it, which is not always that easy, you can really make a big difference in the way they grow and the way their brain grows. So that's how it came about.
I like that because I don't really see a whole lot of cookbooks specifically for children, especially babies, and they're not grown hating food, hating types of food. So kind of like you said, introducing the things that are nutritious and things that are valuable at an early age, that'll take them to life. Because again, I don't think babies just come out hating all these healthy foods. So yeah, I was very impressed with that cookbook. like I said, I don't see many that are tailored towards children. So I appreciate that. And we were talking about the Asian community loving to eat, Filipino, that is literally all we do is just eat, 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 eat. So what role do you think food plays in, you could kind of touch on it earlier, but food plays in preserving your cultural tradition, particularly within like immigrant communities. What do you think the role is that food plays in that?
It's so important. I think it's fundamental because so many second generation, third generation kids, they don't necessarily continue to speak the same language as their parents, but they'll eat the same food. And it's like the book that you mentioned, Crying at H Mart. It was the food that connected the author to her mother, right? And so passing down your tradition, your knowledge, your heritage, and the stories and the memories come with food. So it's this unspoken vehicle for preserving who you are. So it's really beautiful. It's not pushy. It's not aggressive. It's a beautiful way to communicate and keep that bond, I think.
Right. And you see families, like for Filipinos, like rolling lumpia, like that's like a big family thing. Other cultures, dumplings, making dumplings, like kind of that's where all generations of family come together, and kind of like you said, it's their common ground. Almost like music is another thing, like common ground. So how do you balance honoring your specific traditional Japanese culinary techniques with newer techniques out there to kind of meet modern dietary preferences and requirements?
Yeah, I think that's where innovation comes in. There were a lot of foods that I didn't love in Japan, but when I cook it my way, adapting for different spices and the different cooking techniques that I learned outside of Japan, it's interesting to me. And it's something that I love to experiment with. The product that I have called Issei Mochi Gummies is almost sacrilegious in Japan. We eat mochi cakes during tea time and we offer it to the gods. And it's something you take time to share and sit down and have a conversation. For me to cut it up and to make little gummies out of it and give it to my kids, it's because we live in the United States and we have to run to soccer games and they have to bring lunch boxes and I want something healthy. So I think innovation comes from listening to where you come from, but also what you need. So if you can blend those two things, I think it's a beautiful combination that benefits everybody.
And that goes back to the cultures and the generational differences, but all connecting with food, like you said. So going back to Issei. So Issei Mochi Gummies, I want to talk more about that and let kind of listeners know more about this brand. Can you discuss the significance of the name Issei for those that don't necessarily know what it means, and what does that mean? How did you come up with it? How does it embody kind of the ethos of your company, your product? And just want to give some background on that to everybody.
Thank you. It's so important to me. The word means first generation Japanese immigrants in the U.S. It's a very specific word that they started to use during the time when Japanese people were rounded up and they were putting camps. So to define, we're not citizens, but we're first generation or second generation. So my kids are second generation. So I wanted to use a word that honored the heritage of immigrants from everywhere and how it counts and how we have so much to bring to the table and how families come to this country with hopes and dreams of building a better future, but we have something to contribute. So that's the meaning of the word Issei. And a lot of people were like, oh, it's not easy to say, whatever. I was like, you know what? Part of this whole melting pot is that you get to learn a new word once in a while. Sushi is not an American word. Karaoke is not an American word. Neither is ramen. It's okay to learn new words, right? So I really did kind of dig my heels into using that word because it's something that just celebrates immigrants.
And how long has this brand been around? Like when did this kind of give us a little bit more on when this all came together?
So we just launched a year and a half ago. So 18 months ago, we had an exclusive launch at Whole Foods. I hadn't sold a single thing before. So we're really blessed. They launched us in 170 stores in September 22. And today we're in 2,000 stores. which is phenomenal. It's really a blessing. And of course, startup is hard. You don't have a life. You're always hustling and pushing. But the fact that there's so much openness to the mainstream to try something from a different country, and mochi is a very new concept for Americans. Um, and to see that people have accepted it, to a certain extent is something that I'm really proud of. And it goes back to, choosing something that can be a vehicle for intercultural dialogue. Every time, somebody, I meet people at expos or different demos, and, well, what is mochi? Where's that from? What is that? And I get to explain, where it comes from, my country, and what we do, and what, how we honor different celebrations, how we pound it as a community during New Year. It's a great opportunity to just talk about that and for somebody to learn about it. And, the biggest joy is for my kids to be proud of something that comes from their heritage. When I grew up here, I didn't have that, right? Almost all the products that are not mainstream were relegated to the ethnic aisle, right? So it was unheard of to find something that was Asian flavored in the normal candy aisles. I'm so proud. A lot of buyers ask me, do you want to be in the global aisle, or do you want to be in the candy? I said, we're candy. Why do you have to, put me somewhere else? We're candy. We're just as legitimate as a gummy bear Haribo from Germany. Um, so to be able to contribute that, it really loops into the whole concept of Issei, being proud of who you are, being proud of our heritage, and, demanding that we have space, that they create space, right? And that we have something just as beautiful as what's already out there.
I love that. Yeah, I think back to all the foods and candy that I really enjoy, and you're right. It is kind of delegated to one aisle in the main grocery store, so it's a good thing. That and kind of goes back to what you were talking about. Kind of goes back to my next question. You've kind of touched on it already, but what ways do you hope, at least in the future, for Issei Mochi Gummies to further contribute, I guess, a fostering sense more of pride, like more than it's already doing now, fostering a sense of culture, of pride and connection within immigrant and minority communities. Like, what is your vision for this? As it's been 18 months, like you said, like, what is your future vision?
I think my hope is to keep innovating and creating products that resonate with people, offering alternative, clean label food. The main reason why I started to make this is because my kids love Sour Patch and gummy worms and all kinds of, gummies. I'm not against sugar or candy. I grew up eating candy, but I am against junk. Um, so, my hope is to keep innovating and keep showcasing the heritage of different flavors. Being in the Middle East, there's amazing flavors. Like I said, orange blossom, rose water. Latin America, you have tajin, you have chili, you have, chili mango. There's just a universe of flavors that we don't have access to. And you have to go to H Mart, or you have to go to different, ethnic supermarkets that I think people are really ready to taste a lychee gummy or yuzu gummy, which we just launched at Whole Foods. People are curious. People want new flavors. I think they're tired of just vanilla, right? You want diversity. And so if I can help to bring that and help to spark a conversation about, what it means to really have inclusivity, because I think we talk a lot about diversity and representation in the media and many other fields, tech, but you walk through the aisles, who is it really? I mean, are we really represented outside of the ethnic aisle? Right? So that's really important to me. And to keep being able to build bridges and to open up the channels of cultural dialogue. Anything you make with gluten, you can make with rice. We started with mochi gummies, but we have so many ideas and so many things that we're doing R&D on. And I think there's many different levels that I'm interested in. Of course, because my background is from the UN, I think there's ways to unite people. We have a great, beautiful community supporting us. I have a lot of hopes and dreams for this.
Yeah, that kind of leads to my final question on this. So you're obviously very committed to diversity and inclusion, which is great. And as an entrepreneur that's committed to that, with future visions and, you're planning to expand this even more, how do you plan to navigate the challenges that I know that you will seemingly, that you're going to have, and advocate for that representation within the food industry specifically? Like, do you have any plans for that?
I think, advocating for diversity, I think first and foremost is for us to exist and to be on the shelf and to survive. Most startups, they fail, 92% of startups fail within the first year and a half. So we're right there. As long as we are able to do what we want to do in terms of innovation and heritage proud, I think it's by being present, by showing up, that you're actually showing that there is value to who I am, to who we are as a community, and what we bring to the table. So I think that's first step. And being able to discuss about, the challenges that we face as an Asian community, the obstacles, the struggles, I think that will come once you create something that gives you a platform to have a voice. I think that's really important. And so I always talk about every chance I get, every meeting I have, I talk about diversity. I talk about inclusion. I talk about making, carving out a space, making space. So I think, especially when I think of my kids and what they're going to see and what they're going to feel when they walk the aisles or anywhere in life, I just want there to be presence of Asians, presence of diversity. We have to see it first, right? We can't just talk about it. We have to see it. We have to be there. So that's really important to me. And I'm quite loud about it in terms of trying to be on the shelf where I think we can make the most impact.
Which is why work that you do, this podcast, this kind of work is so, so important. And again, so thankful that you're on this show with us to speak on this. We're almost out of time, but I do want to ask a quick, fun question. Just kind of, if you could throw a time traveling mochi snack party in the past and invite, 3 historical figures that you would choose to share a bite with and kind of, introduce them to your idea, to your mochi gummies, who would that be and how do you think they'd react to that?
Oh, that's such a cute question. Do they have to be, can they be alive too? Just anybody?
Yeah, anybody. Yeah, anybody.
I would invite Yoko Ono because I think she's an incredible artist who has been underestimated and undervalued and demonized, but she's an incredible artist who wrote like the most important song in history, Imagine,
right,
was not given credit for. So Yoko Ono, I cherish her. I value her. Who else? I mean, there's so many incredible people. And these are all people that many of them are alive. Frank Gehry, the architect, incredible. Writers, James Baldwin. So those 3, top of my head.
Well, I think that's a good vision of all these people just kind of hanging around and eating your food, and then one day maybe it's something that you can make happen. Right. Okay, well, that is all the time that we have. But before we sign off, Mika, do you have a website or a social media that you can kind of share with our listeners so they can learn more about you, more about Issei Mochi Gummies? I know you also said that you can find them at Whole Foods. Is there anywhere else that you can share with our listeners?
Yes, so our website is mochigummies.com. Our Instagram is Mochi Gummies. Very simple. We're at Whole Foods, Sprouts, Raley's. We just launched at Albertsons and World Market. And we'll be launching in other retail stores this year. So thank you so much for this opportunity and thank you for having me. It's amazing what you're doing with the show. So it's an honor to be part of it. Thank you.
Thank you. No, thank you so much for being on the show. I am going out this weekend and actually I'm buying bags of your stuff. So don't worry. Everybody, once again, I want to thank Mika Shino for joining us on today's show. And we would love to hear from you, our valued listeners, for any suggestions for future guests or topics. Don't forget to subscribe to our program on your favorite podcast platform and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, X, Instagram, and our YouTube channel. Asian Pacific Voices Radio is produced by Asian Culture and Media Alliance, a nonprofit that empowers the Asian Pacific American communities with a voice through media arts. If you'd like to support our program, please visit us at AsianPacificVoicesRadio.com. Again, I'm Joanne Whitlock, and please join us next week for another exciting and thought-provoking Asian Pacific Voices Radio show. Take care, everyone.